In class. Welcome to this week's NORA Startup webinar, and the topic of today is on successful industry-academia collaboration through industrial PhDs. My name is Morten Goodwin, and I'll be trying to coordinate today's session, which is both a webcast and also a podcast. So you might be watching us live right now. You might have downloaded a video, which you watch after it has happened, and you might listen to this as a podcast. For those of you who listen live, the key to these webinars is interaction with the audience. So please, if you have questions to me or to any of the panelists, please make sure that you write this in the chat, and we'll make sure that we answer your collaboration questions. Because in this week's webinar, we will focus on industrial PhDs. That is, companies that seek to enhance their research expertise and activities who apply for industrial PhD funding. So an industrial PhD project culminates in concrete research and development that results and enhance the company's core activities. So today we will talk with 4 industrial doctoral candidates at different stages in the research cycle. We'll learn about the application process, what motivates the companies, and what hurdles we should avoid. So we will first talk with Elisabeth Asser from Sparebanken Sør, who collaborates with us at the University of Agder. We will then talk with Pia Smedsrud from Augere Medical, a spin-off of Simula Research Laboratory. And then we will talk with Nhan Van Nguyen, who finished his PhD with eSmart systems in 2019. So he's already finished and has a lot of knowledge about what to do and how to actually finish. That's very important. But in collaboration with the University of Tromsø, Arctic University. And then last but not least, we will talk with Sven Opalic from Eiendom, collaborating with Rema 1000, who is also in collaboration with the University of Agder. So what we'll do today is we'll have a session with these 4 presenters. They'll have some minutes to present, and then we'll try to have a meaningful debate later on. So audience, please remember, any questions, put them in the chat. And we will start then by letting Elisabeth from the southern part of Norway start it. So Elisabeth, what can you tell us?
Yes, hello, my name is Elisabeth. I'm an industrial PhD at the University of Agder, and I'm now also head of digital channels and market in Sparebanken Sør. Last year, I started a process, a quite rough one, I must say. But before I tell you about that, I'll tell you about my background. I have a master, hovedfag it's called, I'm that old, 20 years ago, in comparative literature and philosophy. And after that, when I finished, I started as a trainee in Gjensidige, financial insurance company, and stayed there for 7 years. And I also had 2 years in Color Line as head of internet. And now for the last 8 years, I've been in Sparebanken Sør as head of digital channels and marketing. So I've been working a lot and had a lot of issues regarding data, customer data, how to use data in the right way, a lot of ethical issues regarding that as a bank. And I started to see that we needed some more information and research about how to use the data in a good way. And I had a friend of mine. She had just delivered her project, her industrial PhD project, and she tipped me and said that try to manage to get up a project so you can start do some research within that field. And my process around that was to get my organization, Sparebanken Sør, to see the value of that kind of research. I also needed the NFR and Forskningsrådet to help me, of course, and because the NFR is the one who has to support financially, of course, the PhD project. And also I contacted the University of Agder because it's been 20 years since I was at the university, so I needed some coaching to find out what is a good enough research project. Yes, so I tried to write a thesis proposal aiming to show the value for the company, for Sparebanken Sør, a proposal that also fit the NFR framework. And I also, in the proposal, had to show how the project filled a gap in the field of the research area. And I also had to try to fill that, to find that killing research question. And I have a tip for you guys, my golden key, how I made it, the way for my success so far. And the success is shortly just to get a contact person in each of the 3 domains. Find yourself a person in the organization or several who really believes in your project and also sees the value, of course, of the project, who is in charge and can take some decisions and help you to get it through in the organization. Find a person in the NFR who can help you and guide you through the process for applying. And also at the university, find a person or 2. I had 2. I had Morten and also another one who is now my supervisor, Eiendom and Rema, to help you to design your project in a good way. So I started in January. I'll finish now. I started in January. I've done this now for a year. I have 2 more years to go. And at the moment, everything's chaotic. So I think everything is just the way it should be. And I also have to say, I have to mention, my project is historical because I'm the very first industrial PhD at the Faculty of Humanities and Education at the University of Agder. Shall I say something about my project, Morten, or is it enough?
No, please. 2 minutes about the project would be very nice.
Okay. My preliminary research question is how will use of AI in the customer interface affect Sparebanken Sør's ability to act as an ethical, socially responsible relational operator? So it is about bank. How can the bank Sparebanken Sør use artificial intelligence in an ethical way? Shortly.
That's a very exciting project, and especially exciting that it is a project not in technology. Well, it's in technology, but it's not in computer science. It's not in those type of traditional industrial PhD candidates. As you said, the first in humanities, maybe the first in philosophy. So what made you convince the company that you should get a philosophy doctorate?
Well, luckily enough, my company is occupied with ethical stuff, and it's important for Sparebanken Sør to do things in an ethical way. Yeah, so it was actually quite easy. But I think that the main thing was that the NFR, of course, subsidized the project. It was much easier for Sparebanken Sør to say yes to this when they got money from NFR, of course.
Right. Because just to be clear, so NFR funds half of the PhD project, and then you have to, the company typically has to fund the other half. So you get half price PhD kind of way from the NFR. So that's it's a very lucrative project, I would say. And the Research Council is throwing money at us to get this, as long as we have a university that can support.
Yes.
And how was it after, you said many years, 20, outside of academia, and then you went back? So what was that process like?
Well, it's quite tough, I must admit, because every organization and every workway have their own way of speaking and thinking. And I must say my way of thinking was quite destroyed from after 20 years away from academia. So I have spent a lot of time trying to get into the way of thinking and speaking and articulate. But I must say I really enjoy it. It's really great.
So that's good to hear. So Elisabeth enjoys her time in academia, and then we will hear if that is also true for Pia Smedsrud, who works with Augere Medical. So thank you, Elisabeth. We will come back to you in the discussion later. But Pia, could you tell us a bit about what you're doing in your process?
Yes. So my name is Pia Smedsrud. So a little bit about my background first. I am a medical doctor, and I was finished with my medical studies in January 2016. And I worked in a hospital as usual for a couple of years. And I think it was partly the fact that hospitals in Norway aren't really at the forefront of using technology. Especially, it was quite frustrating working with slow computer systems and calling each other's old school calling systems. So instead of getting a phone, you have a pager, and we still use that in hospitals. And when I worked at Ullevål, only I think 2.5 years ago, we were still faxing each other stuff because that was the most efficient technology we had for communicating with other departments. So I think that's at least in part responsible for my change of career. So I was pretty lucky, and I got in touch with the research group at Simula, which is now called Holistic Systems, and they are working, among other things, with machine learning in medicine. And I got lucky, and they hired me as a research trainee. So I got a 6-month position there, where I got to learn a lot about machine learning and programming and a lot of stuff that I didn't know before. I have always had an interest for technology, but I didn't have any formal, I haven't been studying technology in that sense, in computer science. And then Simula is, they're a research, research institution. And they have also a department called Simula Innovation. And it's important for Simula that their own researchers are able to take their technology to the market. So what happened around the same time was that this technology that this research group was researching, they were able to make a startup, which is now Augere. And I wanted to pursue a PhD in this, which kind of matched up with the fact that this company was started. So it was very fitting to do an industrial PhD, which is, I was actually the first employee of the company. Because as long as we could get my project approved by UIO, which is the grade giving institution, and I have supervisors both in the company at Simula and at UIO, then, and as long as the company also could provide half of the money, then the NFR pays the rest, so to say, which is very good. So, and in addition, we also actually applied for, you can also apply for some kind of lab money, also in addition to the industrial PhD. So this has been important for me to be able to do this PhD. So the project we are working on is constructing a machine learning based approach for detecting polyps in colonoscopy. So colonoscopy is the not so sexy examination of checking out your large bowel with a camera, looking for polyps that may or may not turn into cancer. It's the gold standard examination for detecting colorectal cancer. And yeah, the nature of the examination is that it's only assessed by the doctor then and there in real time, and they never store the whole videos, which also means that there's a relatively large degree of missed polyps in these examinations, which means that there's a potential for artificial intelligence to detect more polyps and thus save people from cancer, which is what we work on. And my PhD is in computer science, and it's at the Institute for Informatics at UIO. But as I don't have a computer science background, my position in this is mainly to try to be the interpreter between the clinicians and the computer science guys, because it turns out that it's hard to communicate across different disciplines. Yeah. So that's what I'm trying to do.
Thank you, Pia. You said that you were the first employee. So how large is Augere now?
We have 6 employees.
6 employees. So that's very different from Elisabeth. I'm not sure how many it is in Sparebanken Sør, but I'm guessing that's more than 6. At least I've seen more than 6 people there.
Yeah.
So that's interesting because it's more of a startup.
It's very much a startup, yeah.
And so what was that process like?
Well, for me, it's also very different than working in a hospital environment. Not only 6 employees at Ullevål Hospital either. I am also the chief medical officer of the company. So I am at the four-year PhD. So I work 25% for the company. It's also, I think it works very fine for me since my PhD project has the same goals as the company. We have been conducting a lot of data collection, which is important for my PhD, and annotation of the data, which is also the same, and all the research we are performing in the company is also part of my PhD. So this fits nicely, I think. I'm not the one doing most of the programming. We have more skilled people than me at that. But I think we also have other medical doctors in the company, and I think it's been important to have someone who can kind of talk both languages, and it's been important for the collaboration, I think.
You said you were doing your PhD over 4 years. How far into the PhD process are you?
I started a little more than 1.5 years ago. So I have a little more than 2 years left.
Yeah, so yeah. Halfway, if you can put it like that.
Yeah.
So do you feel halfway, or do you feel?
Well, kind of actually.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah. But as Elisabeth said, it's still quite chaotic, and sometimes you feel like everything is going everywhere, but then every now and then you kind of get up to the surface and get some air and get some overlook, and you realize that you're actually going somewhere. So that's good.
That sounds great. It's chaotic, and somehow it needs to be put down and thesis handed in, and one who has been able to do that apparently is Nhan Van Nguyen. So you've finished your PhD already. So we'll then thank Pia Smedsrud, and we'll include you later in the debate. But Nhan, so you're in the luxury here than all the rest, because you finished with all this chaotic process. So please tell us, what was the process like, and how did you do it so successfully?
Yeah, thank you. My name is Nhan Van Nguyen. I'm originally from Vietnam. I came to Norway about 6 years ago to do a master in applied computer science at University College in Holland. And then I continue with an industrial PhD with eSmart system and the UIT machine learning group at the University of Tromsø. The topic of my PhD is advanced in deep learning for automatic autonomous vision by power line inspection. I can try to summarize the project briefly. As you know, in Norway, power lines are inspected and maintained regularly to prevent blackout and power failures. But the traditional methods for inspection, including, for example, low-flying helicopters and foot patrol, for example, inspectors have to walk along the power line and climb up the pole to do close-up inspection. It's quite dangerous to do that. And sometimes they fly helicopters and take pictures and then manually go through each picture to identify defects. And that's a very costly process. So the PhD projects, we aim at automating that process by applying deep learning. So basically we build a drone and then we fly them along the power line, take pictures, and then we build deep learning model to analyze the pictures automatically to identify potential defects. And the goal is to save costs and increase the safety of inspection. And I defended my thesis December last year, so luckily it was successful. I'm now working at the senior data scientist at eSmart system. So I continue working for eSmart after the PhD. I work mostly with AI and deep learning now, and I still continue with the project, which is about automatic power inspection. I would like to share a bit about my experience in the last 3 years. In the last 3 years as industrial PhD was great experience for me, personally and professionally as well. I had the opportunity to work with both one of the best machine learning group in Norway, which is the UIT machine learning group, and eSmart system, which is a leading AI company in automatic power line inspection. And I also got to work with very good mix of academic researchers at the machine learning group and also industrial scientists at eSmart system as well. They have very different perspective when it comes to research. So it's good to learn from different researchers and scientists. Yeah.
And how large is eSmart systems? How many people?
It's about 70 employees now.
70?
Yeah, yes, I have many offices actually in Halden, Oslo, and the US, and different places in Europe as well.
Good. And so they were able to recruit you and to keep you were after your PhD. It was so attractive that you kept doing the same type of work.
Yeah, luckily the PhD projects, they like that, and now it's becoming one of the biggest projects at eSmart system as well. And we're building the project and making it bigger. We actually got another industrial PhD student to continue with that project, and then I'm supervising him now. So hopefully we will have another successful candidate in 3-4 years.
And is your daily life in the company different, very different from before you finished your PhD a year ago to now?
Yes, very different. The most important thing is I can sleep better now.
You sleep better.
And you know, it's a very different experience as an industrial PhD. And my industrial PhD was only 3 years. It was 100%. So it was a bit intense. After that, I get to work and continue with what I like to do. So it's much better now.
So Elisabeth, was it 3 years? Pia, is it 4? And you did it 3 years. And Sven, I think you are doing it 4 years. And the question, of course, is if you sleep as well as Nhan do. So thank you, Nhan. We will include you in the debate in a few minutes, but Sven, do you sleep as well as Nhan, or are you struggling?
I sleep horribly, but luckily not due to the PhD, due to my daughter keeping me up at night. No, the PhD is progressing. I'm now on a little bit over halfway in a 4-year run. My thesis is on deep neural networks for smart warehouse intelligent control of, let's say, complex energy systems. And I'm also the chief technical officer in my property development company. In fact, we've done some work together with eSmart systems, and we have some platforms that we use. So maybe we'll come across each other now. Yeah, so I've been working for quite a while. It's progressing well. I've done the publications that I wanted. It's a difficult field. I have an engineering background from a very practical perspective. So the transition to programming and academia was, it was very different. I think it's gone nicely, but the chaotic phase I can well attest to. It's landed a bit more now, perhaps, but in the beginning, a lot of time was spent just picking up the programming language, picking up a lot of computer science theory that I wasn't familiar with. But it's been incredibly useful, and we also have some very nice results. Trying to control, for example, trying to control a battery system connected to a photovoltaic solar power plant. We have, as a company, we're trying to push the border on building and area development towards a more sustainable future. And as the complexity increases, we see more and more need for intelligent systems to control all the various components. I got started and went into this thinking somebody else would do the PhD. We got in touch with Morten at UIA about 2 years ago, maybe a little more, asking him what he thought about the direction our project was taking, what the possibilities were, and he advised us that a PhD was perhaps the most suitable way forward. And it was then that people in Rema 1000 suggested that maybe I should do it, since I knew the buildings and I knew the systems and I'd been part of developing them. So after some time, I agreed, and I'm very happy that I did. It's been extremely educational and useful, and I've got to know a lot of very skilled people. This year I was supposed to be, which kind of leads me to something very good about NFR. A lot of things have been mentioned already, but they also have this foreign exchange program. So this year I was supposed to be in Melbourne in Australia. I was supposed to leave in April, me and my whole family, and we were supposed to be there until Christmas or New Year's. So it's been a journey, but hopefully we'll get to go next year. The what do you call it? Not the offering, but tilbudet, of the foreign exchange program that they offer is very nice. You get very good terms, and you can bring your family, and yeah, I would encourage everybody to at least explore that possibility.
And the reason you didn't go to Australia might be obvious to most, but for those listening 2 years from now, it was because of right? Yes.
Yes, it's due to the virus that we're kind of plagued by right now.
Oh.
Yeah.
And how large is your company, Sven?
Yeah, so the actual company I'm in now, we're only 5 or 6 people. We're going to be 6 people now. But we're part owned by Reitan, which is the people who own Rema 1000. And so we're part of a pretty large system, but we operate, I would say, very closely to a small company. Very dynamic, with very good communication and dynamic a dynamic organization where we're allowed to do almost everything, and we change pace and change direction as we see fit.
So that means that we have examples from relatively large companies and also small companies here. And we heard also that Pia and Nhan did went into the PhD program not that far from their masters. What about you, Sven?
Yeah, so I spent almost 10 years working as an engineer within renewable energy and energy systems from the practical side, not the software side. So yeah, it's been a while since I was in academia as well.
And you're also doing it 4 years, right?
Yeah, 4 years.
So that means that you and Pia are doing 25% of company things, and then 75% of the of PhD things. Is the idea.
Yeah, exactly.
And one of the things I would like to discuss today is exactly that. So how do you, in a small company or a large company, say no to customer interaction if that takes time for your PhD? How do you prioritize PhD work versus company work? Do you spend 4 days doing PhD and Friday company work, or how is that? So since we have you talking now, Sven, we can start with you. So how do you prioritize the PhD work and versus the company work?
Yeah, I mean, I guess you just do twice the amount of work. To be very honest, at least at times it feels like that. But we talk about it, and like this fall, we know there's a lot of stuff happening in the company. So I've been doing less PhD work, whereas this spring I had more time to do PhD. The plan was also, when I go to Australia, to focus almost exclusively on the PhD and to just be kind of, I could touch bases back home, but other people would be more day to day. So hopefully if I go next year, then I'll be able to focus on it almost 100%. But yeah, it's a challenge. You have to put down some ground rules and say no. And yeah, it's difficult. So
what about you, Pia? Do you also do 4 years, meaning 75% PhD, 25% company work? How do you manage to do that?
I have to agree with Sven. It's it's hard to keep those hours at a minimum, but I actually started as a full-time PhD student, which was a very bad idea. So if there's any chance of you doing anything other than a PhD in the company, then I would advise to just start it, for example, at a 4-year from the beginning, because you're going to do that work anyway. You might as well kind of get paid for that, and a company might as well kind of get paid for that. Because that was no problem with the NFR, to just kind of spread the money out over 4 years instead. Even halfway, or after almost a year, I think we changed that, seeing how it didn't really work out. But it's yeah, you have to kind of, you have I have like supervisors who are mainly academic, and I have supervisors in the company, and of course everyone is keen on me getting the PhD done, but it's you're kind of dragged in different directions. So at the end, it's I who have to say no to something, and kind of sometimes say, do I really need to join this meeting? Do I have to be in this meeting, or could I maybe do something else for now? Because no one else is going to say that, I think. And then so it's not like once a week I do company work. It's some phases are more company and some phases are more academic, I think.
Right.
And I also tried to find, because you have to take these like credits, or credits. So I tried to find courses that were both matching my topic, but also could be kind of combined more easily with work. Yeah.
So it's nice to hear that NFR is flexible, that if you apply for 3 years, you can change it to 4. I guess the amount NFR pays out, the Research Council, is the same anyway, so why shouldn't they be? But
yeah, that's the same. But I think it's it makes more sense at least for me and for the company also, because it's going to take 4 years. So the company kind of also gets their expenses kind of over 4 years.
What?
Yeah.
So, but you said that it was a bad idea to do a PhD 3 years because you have to do the company work anyway. And Elisabeth, you do a PhD 3 years. So is it a bad idea for you?
Sorry?
So Pia said that it was a bad idea to do a PhD 3 years. And do you think so?
Well, I hope not for me. Based on my experience as a manager for 10, 15 years, I knew that if I worked a few percentage, it would never be 10% or 15, it would be the double at least. So I asked if I could do this 100% because I knew I needed to devote myself 100% into the project. So for me, it's been a good solution, but I think that's up to you and what kind of situation you are in, what kind of company you are in. I think for me, in a big company like Sparebanken Sør, it's easier. But if you're in a small company and you're a critical resource, resource, then it's more difficult, of course, to go out and not deliver work and just do research. And another advantage is that I'll be back faster. 100% after only 3 years, not 4. Yeah.
But that means that there's nobody calling you on a Tuesday evening saying that we have this very important meeting with a customer, you need to join.
No, not that kind of calls, not anymore. In the beginning it was a little bit, but then, but now it's been a while since I got the calls. Yeah, every now and then, but not that much.
Good. So it seems to be a bit unclear your process, Pia. So could you please explain again how you went from a 3-year PhD into a 4-year PhD?
Yeah. So it was an industrial PhD from the beginning. But what happened was that we kind of saw that I was spending more and more time on company stuff, which was when we decided that it should probably be a 4-year PhD instead, because company stuff took up more and more of my time, and that meant I had less and less time for the academic and the PhD work. So that was how we decided to switch, and then we had to apply NFR to kind of spread the money out over the remains of the money over more years, or 4 years in total. So that's how we switched kind of. And then I had to apply to UIO also for an extension of the studierett.
Yeah, the right to study somewhere, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Because there's several applications, typically one for the university, you are a right to be a PhD student, and one for Research Council to get funding. And there's, of course, the third part is the company. So there's a lot of companies all around that have their own interest. Maybe there's even conflicts of interest sometimes. So Nhan, did you experience any type of conflict between the company and Simula or University of Tromsø?
Yes, of course. My PhD was like a 3 years, so it's I didn't have like 20% to work, but of course we cannot say no to customer meetings and stuff like that. But what we can do is, from my personal experience, is that we can choose the one that benefits the PhD and focus on that. In my case, the goal was to build something that can reduce the cost for utilities. So I chose to attend meeting with utility to understand their process and things like that. And those meetings actually helped me a lot. So that's one thing. And another thing, I have to agree with Sven. That sometimes we have to do both, but just need some ground rules so that the company, they understand that some tasks are for PhD, but yeah, some we can do, but not that as like a full-time employee. So.
Right. And as a technical computer science PhD, do you you can see some people will say that there's a conflict between publishing result and maybe doing a patent or keeping something secret. Did you experience any conflict like that? No?
Yes, of course, but we just need to separate the thing that the company owns and a thing that we can publish. In my case, the data, the company owns the data. I cannot publish the data, but the methods that train on the data, and if we make something general that can be applied in all the field, then it's a solid research publication already, and it doesn't contain any like secret material that the company don't want to publish, and that's okay.
So it means that if I read your publications, I will not get the company data, but I'll get the general method, but still the company uses that method with some data.
Yes, yeah.
And is this similar to how you do it, Sven, in your company? The company keeps the data, and me at the university is able to read it?
Yeah, I would say it's very similar. And I remember we had a lot of these discussions going into it, but it's been much less of an issue than we thought it would be. And I also, what really astonished me about the computer science and AI community is that so much of the resources are publicly available anyway. So many of the programming libraries, everything's kind of, knowledge is really shared. So my PhD at least is application based. So we're taking a lot of the knowledge that's already out there. Of course, we're adding some components, but I don't see it as a big issue really, not in this area. I think keeping the data and sharing the method is a very good approach. Yeah.
And can you relate at all to this, Elisabeth? Is the company want to have some of your philosophical methods secret, or?
Well, actually, I think the difference is it's my reasoning that is the research sort of. So it's not the same. It's not comparable in that way.
But can you see any? Have you experienced any other hurdles that you may envision or tell us, or other people who want to apply for an industrial PhD that could stand in the way, other than Corona? We know Corona is a big hurdle, but
any burden? Sorry.
Anything that potentially could stand in your way that you were able to push away. So maybe it could be. As you talked about getting back to academia, but what about the writing process? Is it something that you found difficult?
Yes, of course. Doing a PhD is really hard work, so that might be a burden in itself. But for me, I don't see any burden. I think it's a huge gevinst for all parties. Just for me as an employee, and for the company also. Yeah.
So
really good thing.
It's a benefit for you personally. It's a benefit for the company. What about the university? So what do they get from it?
Yeah, I think also the university, because how do you say this in English? The university is doing itself relevant for the corporate life. So my industrial PhD is also doing the humanities at the university more relevant for the corporate life. That's a very good thing, I think.
Right. And would you have any advice if, let's say, there's some companies listening now? We want to have an industrial PhD because we want to increase our research experience. So Elisabeth first, and then maybe Pia later. So what would be the general advice if a company now listens and says, I want to be an industrial PhD? How should they go about?
Just find a person who has the interest and the background, of course, and find a problem you want to solve, and do research around, and just get started. And find these persons at the NFR to guide you, of course. Stop there.
And I understand in your case, Elisabeth, you were the one driving it, and in Sven's case, he was thinking that some others should do the PhD. What about you, Pia? Was it you who drove the process?
Well, it was both. I was kind of in the Simula group, and I wanted to pursue a PhD. And so it kind of fit nicely into the starting up this company, which was mainly in the field that I wanted to do research in. So it was kind of at the same time, or they kind of offered me opportunity to join the company and do an industrial PhD there, which was also it was a good opportunity for me to get funding for the project, for a project that I wanted to do. I think it's important to kind of realize that you have to have a project that fits the company also, because it's going to be some time, or the PhD candidate is going to have to do some stuff that's not necessarily as relevant for the company all the time. But in the end, it will benefit the company to have a PhD, industrial PhD student, I think.
So we had the benefit from the company, we had the benefit from the university. But what is there anything the university can do to make it the transition from industrial life into PhD life better? Pia, and then maybe Nhan.
I'm not sure. I think it's well, it is a bit different. I see that it's a bit different than other PhD students in the same group, because I'm in this host group at Simula. They don't have this industrial side of everything, which is, I think, a bit different. In many things, like you said, with patents or publications and stuff like that, you have to kind of have that in the back of your head all the time. But I think it's quite, at least I was lucky that, or our project got approved by the UIO, kind of, because we have this both in the company and in the group. It's a significant academic background also, which makes it maybe a bit easier, because the other people that I work with in the company is also from the same research group. So it's not as industrial heavy from before. While the more kind of industrial people in the company is a bit more kind of towards, do you really need this PhD, or can't you just work for the company? So I think it's good to have this. You have to kind of have both sides, and I think that is important, and you have to have both sides communicating, because the academic people are bound to focus more on that, and the industrial people are kind of bound to focus more on that. So they will try to fight their own cases, I think. Right.
And let's go to Sven before we go to you, Nhan, because I think you have the exact opposite experience, because your company is not very academically heavy. Can you tell us a bit about that experience, Sven?
Yes, that's okay. Correct. It's not very academic heavy, actually. They focus mostly on the industrial research and implementation and things like that. And with university, they usually expect different things. But for industrial PhD, I think it's best to have both and to have balance. And in my case, it was very useful that the lab that I work for and eSmart communicated very well, and we make a very unified goal. Actually, everyone understands that that's what we want to achieve, both at the university and at eSmart. So it was a good mix there. Yeah.
And do you have the same experience, Sven? The conflict maybe between not so academically heavy company and very academically heavy university?
I wouldn't say conflict, but I think depending on the person, there definitely could be some issues. The PhD I'm doing is kind of very driven by my own interest and my own direction. So that has good and bad aspects. It's very good that when I'm very interested and I know very clearly where I want to go, that gives the PhD purpose and direction, and I'm not obliged to do anything that I don't think makes sense, which is good. But of course, not having anybody really to discuss any of because I'm probably the most technical person in my company, regardless of if it's computer science or if it's renewable energy or anything. So I don't really have the internal partners for discussion. but I think it's been okay. I see there are some potholes that I probably could have fell into. I think that were avoided. As for the academic side, it's been a personal challenge to think more in terms of academia, but I think you've been very helpful. Especially you, Morten, know your ways around the university. It's very, even, I know you're very busy, but even small details, sometimes you just fix them because you know I don't know who to talk to, and then you just get it done, which is extremely helpful. Frees up a lot of mind space. So yeah, so I see the challenges, but I don't think, I think they have been avoided so far.
That's nice to hear, of course. But your boss, for example, does he understand what you're doing, Sven?
From a very shallow perspective, I would say, not to speak ill of him. He comes from the economic side of running property development. So he's very interested, and he wants to know what we're doing. But I can't speak technical details. It has to be kind of, I give him the overview, the big picture. Yeah. And
I want to come into another question that came from the audience. So for some of you, it's obvious for me how you chose your university. Elisabeth is in the southern region. You chose the southern university. Pia is in the Oslo region. It's natural to think Oslo. You're in the Oslo region, Sven. You have a collaboration with Rema, which is a very Trondheim company. So how did you choose your university?
Yeah, I mean, you know this story, but I'll tell it so everyone else can hear. I actually, the finishing of our first, let's say, smart warehouse project corresponded very nicely with the launch of CARE, the Center for Artificial Intelligence Research at UIA. So I got in touch with Ole Kristoffer, and then he recommended you as a contact. Yeah. But of course, we do our due diligence. So we talk to NTNU and we talk to UIO, and they have very skilled people there. But even though geographically it didn't make sense, the fit for the kind of the knowledge base and our application and the type of person we wanted to work with was better suited for UIA. So it was, yeah. It just felt like a better fit for us, at least.
Of course, that's nice for us, and it's always nice to have collaboration. I'll like to ask all of you, finishing up now, the role of NORA.startup. So NORA.startup is meant as a collaboration between academia and industry, especially startup companies. And if you think 2 years, 5 years in advance, what would be the greatest opportunity you can think of for NORA.startup? How should NORA.startup support your daily life? So let's start with Elisabeth. What do you think NORA.startup should help you with? Ideally?
Well, that's a very difficult question, I believe. Of course, touch base with us, with the company, and then tell what you're doing, make yourself relevant. Come with information about what you do and how you see how you can support the bank in any way.
And that's good. So that probably one of the most important things we can do in my mind is simply explain, this is the possibilities you can do. This is what a startup can get. For example, when you explain about the possibilities with industrial PhD or nærings-PhD, which is also possible in the public sector for those that don't know. It's 2 PhD possibilities, nærings-PhD, industrial PhD, and public sector PhD, which is basically the same. Pia, what role would NORA.startup ideally have to support your daily life?
Yes, I think, as you said, being kind of giving out the information. I think if we had this when we started, I think we would more easily have found a lot of the information we needed, actually, which I think is important. I think also that you can kind of be put in contact with similar companies that have done some of the stuff that you're trying to do before. Would be nice.
And you think also it's a good opportunity for industrial PhDs to talk to each other. So do you talk to many other industrial PhD in your daily life? Yeah.
No, not at all.
So is this the first time you talk to other industrial PhDs? Or?
I think I met some at NFR, had this industrial PhD gathering, but they had to it was supposed to be another one, but it got canceled due to funding and then Corona. So that was the one time I got to actually experience that there were other industrial PhDs. And now I know 3 more.
So we can make friends here in NORA. That's good.
Definitely.
So Nhan, what do you think? What could be NORA startup? Is it you that are a bit more computer science than at least Elisabeth? What about things like computational power, that type of resources? Is that something that NORA startup could help you with? Or is that not useful at all?
Yes, of course. In my case, I was lucky because eSmart can provide that kind of resource. But for all the industrial PhD students that I know, they have the struggle of finding enough resource, computational power to do their research, and that's an important part of deep learning and machine learning based PhD. You know, if NORA could help with that, that would be very helpful for industrial PhD students and make their life easier. And another thing is about the data as well. Processing data is also a big part of a PhD. That's something I think NORA could help as well.
So data, computational power. Do you have anything to add, Sven? What about intellectual property rights, etc.? Is that something NORA?
Yeah, definitely. That was actually what I was thinking. Legal advice, administrative and practical advice for startup companies would be very useful. I can see a lot of areas where you could be very beneficial. Yeah, I went to Gründerskolen as part of my master thesis.
Oh.
That model was very nice and very helpful. We talked to, I was in Texas, and we were lectured to by successful startup individuals who had been either running multiple startup companies or just had one major success. Their advice was very helpful. So you could maybe get in touch with Gründerskolen and those type of environments as well. Maybe they have some possibilities where you can collaborate.
So at least Gründergarasjen and other startup initiatives are very close by in NORA startups. So that's a very good suggestion. So I think we have to wrap up. Those questions from the audience, which there have been many of, we didn't manage to answer. We'll try to answer by email. And I'd like to thank all of the participants. But before I do that, I'll make sure that those listened are aware of NORA Startup. It's a organization that is supposed to enable collaboration between startups in artificial intelligence and academia. Not only industrial PhDs that we talked about today, but other types of collaboration. Bigger project from the Research Council, EU, or anything that an AI startup would need. And today we've been so lucky that we've had 4 very talented industrial PhDs. We have had Elisabeth Asser from Sparebanken Sør together with the University of Agder, Pia Smedsrud from Augere Medical in collaboration with Simula, Nhan Van Nguyen from eSmart Systems in collaboration with the University of Tromsø, and Sven Opalic from Eiendom and Rema in collaboration with the University of Agder. So the next webinar will be in 2 weeks. It will probably be the last webinar before the Christmas and the end of New Year. And I don't want to spoil anything, but we have potentially great webinar, but everything is not settled yet. So we should just be a little bit secretive. But in 2 weeks, it will be a great webinar if everything goes well. So I wish all of you a nice weekend. Thank you.